Hey guys, welcome to the show. Subscribe, rate, and review. Tell a friend. I've been getting a lot of emails about the Christy Swanson interview. Thank you guys so much for listening. Uh, that was a real good dream come true. I'm glad you guys enjoyed it. Uh, I got one email saying it's the best one ever, and that meant a lot to me. But then, there's been 230 episodes, so I think that's up to debate. But anyways, yeah. I thank you guys. That was amazing and awesome. And I had a blast. Today's guest is someone who I admire just as much. And it's gonna be fun. But before I get into that, a couple dates. I'll be at the Rec Room headlining Friday, September 1st at 7 p.m. Get your tickets at recroomhb.com. And then I'll be at the Brea Improv with Pablo Francisco from bleh, sorry, Guttermouth with Pablo Francisco. That would be the second week of September. Get your tickets at breaimprov.com. Alan Lee will not be joining me today. Victor will not be joining me today. I will be a Lone Ranger in the Lone Ranger desk. So I'm excited. My guest today, big fan. I watched her stand-up special from the 90s the other night, and I thought it was just so great, and I'm actually going to ask her about that. But you've seen her. For people who didn't know, she was a stand-up. She's a great stand-up. She was the host of the Rosie O'Donnell show, which was a very big show for me growing up. I would watch that after school with my stepmom, and we just fascinated by just how amazing this person was. Like it was just really great. You've also seen her in the Flintstones, which is one of my favorite movies. Another Stakeout, Sleepless in Seattle, A League of Their Own. Like I said, she hosted the Rosie O'Donnell show. You've also seen her on The View, and she was great. She was so kind to do Razor Riffs. So, guys, if you like this episode, subscribe, rate, review, tell a friend, and enjoy the interview with the great Rosie O'Donnell.
You're listening to Reza Riffs with Keith Reza and Alan Lee, right here on LA Talk Radio.
All right, folks, the great Rosie O'Donnell is about to come through via Zoom. It usually takes a second for the audio to come in, but she's here. Hi, Rosie O'Donnell.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you so much for saying yes.
Well, I have a kid who's autistic, and I'm a supporter of all people autistic, and I thought it would be a fun thing.
Oh, thank you. And I just gotta say, I love your podcast, that the Onward. I'm a big fan. I've listened to about 4 or 5 episodes, and I think it's great how you share, like before you interview people, you share like beautiful stories about your child and stuff. So I think that's really cool.
Thank you so much. It's such a interesting thing to adopt a baby. My fifth child I adopted at 50 years old, and then to have her diagnosed at about 2.5 with autism. I thought, well, we're on a unique journey. Here we go, and it's been a wonderful, wonderful relationship that I get so much out of. And, although autism can be hard for some families,
Yeah.
and you really, there are different levels and different challenges that people have. And I just have found that what we're going through is a beautiful, beautiful thing.
Yeah, I think it's also cool that they could diagnose it so early now. Because when I was diagnosed when I was 13 in 1999. So, now I think it's cool that, people could diagnose when they're more younger and they could get the help and the services like that.
Totally. I mean, Dakota was speaking in full sentences at one.
Oh my
She,
God.
yeah, she has pretty intense echolalia,
Oh,
and she was reciting parts of the Frozen movie, and she hadn't even really, talked that much or put two words together. And all of a sudden, we're watching it, and I hear her say, "I've been impaled." And I was like, "What?" And then I hear Olaf say, "I've been impaled." And I was like, it was the same pitch, it was the same everything. I thought, oh boy, this is something unique.
yeah. Well, I got the other one. I was very not nonverbal, and then I started becoming verbal when I started doing stand up. So
Oh,
like,
wow.
so I think stand up really saved my life, you know? And
Were there stand-ups you admired that you watched all the time?
yeah, and that's where like I'm very lucky. Like my favorite comic of all time, who ended up becoming my best friend, who I toured with, was Norm Macdonald.
Oh, I
So
loved him.
yeah, so it was it was just great. But I wanted to ask you something in the old stand-up days, and like we'll kind of jump around a little, so I apologize. But I was watching your special, it was probably 95, 96-ish, and I noticed that when you do the stand-up, you don't take the mic out of the stand, you leave it in the stand and you carry the mic, and that's something like I don't carry the mic, but I leave it in the stand. So I was just wondering, like, have you always done that when you did the stand-up, or was that just a spur of a moment thing?
No, I started with a stand, a mic in the stand, and then that leaning, that kind of lean the stand a little bit to this way when you're talking or that way. But I never was one to take it out. And first of all, we had cords back then when I was doing it. So it was a long cord and it was kind of hard to move it around. And I talk with my hands a lot. And so I always did it like that. And it's funny when I do specials now, I say I need a stool with a glass of water and I need a mic stand that is strong and locked in one position so I can't move it.
Yeah.
And then we do that backstage before I go on. But that's just how I learned. And similar to when I learned skateboarding, I always put my right foot in the back. I don't know why I did it that way, but everybody that looks at me skateboarding goes, "Why do you do it that way?" I'm like, that's how I learned it. I don't know.
Well, I don't know about like when you started, but like when I started, everyone tells me that's like everyone told me that's the wrong way, and I think like the because like in my comedy I talk about being autistic for 45 minutes, so like I think the stand is a shield for not letting people come, you know what I mean? So like I
I
like
feel the same way. I feel like it sets up a border. It sets up like the fourth wall starts right there. And I don't know, there's no real wrong way to do it. When you get out there, it's like surfing. When you get out there and you get up on a wave, you get to the shore, you did it.
yeah,
When you do stand up and you get on the stage and you have 10 minutes to do, you have a tight 10 prepared and they all work and you're out there at 9:50, that's a home run. You did it.
yeah,
So it's just Malcolm Gladwell has an amazing series of books Outliers, and millions of books that he's written. He's a very intelligent man, and he says that in order to become an expert at anything, you need to invest at least 10,000 hours
yeah,
in
10,000 hours. Yeah.
yeah. And I think that it's true of stand up when people say to me, um, you know, how did you learn it? I'm like, you just have to keep doing it. You just have to do it every time, every place, anywhere that you can. I mean, I used to work bowling alleys. I used to work at Ground Round where you could throw the peanut shells on the floor and
Oh,
families are ordering dinner. In the middle of your set, you hear, Lisa, your plates are up. Like, so it was not an easy way to start doing stand up, but I was very young. And, when you're 16 years old, you think you can take on the world. And if they didn't laugh, I remember thinking, well, they were stupid because I am 16, I don't have any kind of introspection yet. And in a way, it really helped me to get up there that young.
yeah. Did you ever do laundry mats? Those are the worst gigs.
No, but that they sound almost as bad as the bowling alley. But how was the laundromat gig?
Oh, people just care about cleaning their clothes. They don't care about jokes or whatever. So it was just like, whatever. But I wanted to also compliment you on the special I watched. The guy's cell phone rang and you picked it up and you talked to his wife. And I was just wondering, was that like, because usually when people film specials, they film it 4 or 5 times. And that to me seemed like it was in the spur of a moment type of thing.
Yes, it was. It was. We filmed twice for that one. We filmed the early show and then the late show, and that was it. Then we cut it up. And Boston has such amazing, amazing audiences. I've loved performing there. It's been a really wonderful place for me and my kind of stand up. And I started there, and I started in New York, and then I went to college at BU. And while I was at BU, I went and worked all the clubs there, and didn't go to class that much because I was up late doing 20 minutes at the Comedy Connection.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I remember that we only did it once, and it only happened one time. That it was funny enough that we said leave it in and take out that other bit about nuns or something.
Yeah. I just thought how you handled that was just so funny and so cool because if that would have happened to me, I would have been like, dude, I filmed my entire special and right at
Yeah.
the end.
You know what? There is a look that I give someone in that special where I haven't watched it for a long time, but I was watching it with my kids, and somebody starts to talk, and I just give them the side eye while I'm still doing my act, and I shut them right up. I was like, wow, that was pretty funny because you do feel that when you're filming one, that you want everything to go right.
Yeah.
And you don't want a heckler to come in and possibly ruin, a tight 45, a tight hour. So I've been lucky in that I haven't had any horrible hecklers. I haven't had any really bad situations. People usually they're drunk. They're trying to help you. They don't really realize that they're definitely not helping you.
Yeah,
But
definitely.
yeah, it's interesting. How did you meet Norm McDonald?
So I met him because I couldn't get into comedy clubs. And he was playing at the Irvine Improv. And I was 15 or 16 and I snuck in. I watched him do stand up. I kept doing that every year he would come in. And then when I actually could go in, like buy a ticket, I just stayed and I just met him. And then I remember the first thing he said to me he's like, "Hey, you're a little awkward, man." And I was like,
You were
uh,
like, look in the mirror, Norm.
"Yeah." And
I think he could have been a little spectrumy, don't you think?
oh, he definitely had Asperger's. He was a math genius, you know.
Yeah.
And yeah, and I am kind of lost in stand up now because like I toured with him for 9 years and then when he passed, it was during COVID and stuff. Now it's kind of like now I'm on my own, you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it's kind of like a weird journey because I was so used to being taken care of and now it's like I'm trying to take care of myself. Does that make sense?
That totally makes sense. And that's a hard thing when you lose someone, never mind a mentor in this business, but when you lose someone that you love like that and you went with them all the time, you skied together and so now you go down that slope alone, it's a little more scary without somebody there watching and helping you maybe understand the things that you didn't really get at the beginning.
Yeah. But you also like you had an experience when you were starting up where I mean I don't know if she was one of your heroes or whatever, but Shirley Hempful saw you out doing the stand up and she said, "Hey, I want you to open up for me." And like she got you kind of like a first confidence thing. You know what I mean?
She got me my first paying gig.
Yeah.
And she told the club owner that if you don't let her open for me this weekend, because she arrived early and was there at open mic night, and I was the MC. And she said, if you don't let her open for me, I'm not going on. Because the club owner was like, she's 17. We're
Yeah.
not going to pay her money. And she says, you're going to pay her $20 a show, which was like $100 on a weekend, which for
Back
me,
then, yeah.
and when I was 16 or 17, that was a lot of money. And
Yeah.
so then it began, and I ended up hiring her manager to be my manager, Bernie Young, and then he ended up producing my TV show with me. And I loved her. She was very, very kind. She really helped me. She didn't have to, and she helped me throughout my career, and I'm forever grateful to her.
Don't you think like the status of currency is kind of funny because like you said, you know, when you were 16, 17, $25 was like $1 million, and now it's like $100. You know what I mean? It's kind of
Right.
like
It's a
so
whole different world. I remember when my grandmother passed away, she lived with us. And when she died, my dad went in to clean out her stuff and he found all of these envelopes from her Social Security, I guess, that she had signed the check. So they cashed it for her, and there were just envelopes of $100 bills all over her room, in the dresser, in the laundry room. And I remember when he came down and showed it to me, and I thought, oh my God, we're millionaires. What, we can buy a new house. Like, we did actually end up buying a new car, right? A Plymouth Volare. But my nana definitely kept all of her money in little envelopes upstairs. And boy, when I found it, I thought that was the end.
yeah. Did you ever tell her that you found it, or did you like?
Well, that was after she passed. We went through
Oh,
and
okay.
yeah, yeah. So she lived with us her whole life, and then the end, she was in the hospital for a while, and then when she died, my dad was like, "We have to clean out the room," and money after money after money. Felt like
It's
I
like a
won the
little
lottery.
treasure hunt.
It was treasure hunting, totally.
And then I just have two more questions on stand up, and then we'll move on to the talk shows and stuff. You did the Star Search, which at the time was like a big, probably one of the first, competition type shows to help artists and stuff. And now there's so many competition shows. In the time, do you think like that was healthy for an artist? Because now I watch competition shows and I think it's kind of not healthy. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, it was definitely a different time. There were three channels, and then this other channel came on, Fox, and people were like, "What is that going to be? What channel is that?" And it was 9 or 5 where I grew up, and Star Search was a hugely popular show. It was almost like Idol because there wasn't anything like it on TV. And when I was on, they had actors and actresses who did little scenes, and then they had stand-ups who would only do 120 seconds. When you walked out, you had the mic, and there was a little digital clock that said 120, 119,
Yeah.
118. And that's how you had to do your act. It was very intimidating. I never had like a countdown clock in front of me. But I tell you, I went from being pretty much an unknown comic to headlining in the middle of the country. And I didn't really have enough material at the time because I was very young. Star Search was 84, so I was 22 years old. And, I won like 5 times, which got me like $28,000 or something. And I ended up moving to LA and buying myself a car. And the guy totally ripped me off because I had all the cash in my pocket. And I like walked in and said, "Do you have any cars here that I could get for $26,000?" And they just looked at me like, "Here's an idiot. Let's reel her in." And I ended up buying a car with a stick shift, which I did not know how to drive, and with no air conditioning in the valley in 1986.
Is the Valley no, that's not by San Francisco, right?
No, the San Fernando. So in like Burbank,
Oh,
or
okay.
Sherman Oaks in the valley here in the LA Valley.
Because I know San Francisco has a weird area. I don't know if it's called the Valley, but I my first car was a stick shift too, and I bought in San Francisco, and they had all these hills, and I didn't know how to drive a stick, so
Yeah, and that's a hard place to learn.
very hard place. But do you think stand-up comedy like really helped you too when you got your talk show? Because you know you're hosting and stuff, but I feel like that made it a huge strength for you. You know what I mean?
Totally, totally. The more you're used to dealing with talking as a living, the more you're used to having to listen and ride the wave of a crowd's enthusiasm or lack thereof, and try to find your way through it, safely down the hill or onto the shore or whatever metaphor you want to use. I think that I love talk shows so much, especially the ones in the daytime. Dinah Shore, Merv Griffin, Mike Douglas. Those were the ones that I would watch all the time. And I was very familiar. I had put in my 10,000 hours with those three shows.
Uh,
I wasn't always allowed to stay up to watch Johnny Carson, but when I did, I would sneak in and listen to my parents listening to it in the living room, and try to hear his monologue. And he was the ultimate, but I didn't get to study that one as much as I did the other three. And so when I got the opportunity to do a talk show, I knew that I would know how to do it from the combination of stand up and just from being an ardent fan of the genre.
Yeah. And then it was also very interesting because your show was live. Was that a decision you wanted to do, or was that just
Yes.
how it came with the deal? Okay.
No, that's what I wanted to do because Live with Regis and Kelly was the one that I always used to substitute for. And I love doing that show. Nobody could say to you after the Dom DeLuise cooking segment, by the way, that didn't go as we like it. Let's do it again. Right. I wanted to make sure, like a stand up show, you do it, you go out there for an hour, you perform the entire hour, and you walk off and you're done. And you don't keep tinkering with it. You do another one the next day, and you do another one the next day, and you do another one, and eventually you kind of grind off all the rough edges and you get a smooth stone there, and people can easily understand who you are and what you're doing. And it was very helpful to have a live show that I couldn't go back and pick on, because I know if I watch myself, I'd be like, oh, why did I wear that? I can't believe I didn't pause there. I really sound too New York in this bit. Like, I would just pick myself apart, I think, as so many performers do. So I liked having the live aspect to it.
Do you have a hard time watching yourself, like on the TV or like watching reruns and stuff?
Yes. I
Yeah, I
don't
do.
really, when I see myself, I keep going. It's not like, everyone says every time I see League of Their Own, I stop. I'm like, I don't, because I watch myself when I'm critical. I'm critical of myself too much, much more so, I think, than people are.
I
I
think
give myself a much harder time than others give me.
I think all entertainers are like that because like I'm not famous, but I do stand up. So like whenever I watch myself on, I'm like, I don't like I prefer hearing myself compared to watching myself.
Yeah, that's why I love doing a podcast too, because we don't have the visual part
Yeah,
here. Like I talk to people like this where I see them and they see me, but we don't ever put that part on because I didn't want it to become a performance. And I didn't want people to worry so much about how they look that you couldn't get into a real deep emotional discussion. And when there's, conversation and there's presentation, and stand up is presentation and podcasts are conversation. So it's a little bit of a different art form, but they definitely help each other.
definitely. I think podcasting is actually going to replace like late night stuff eventually because you've been a panel on a guest on late night where you only have that 8 or 9 minutes for people to know who you are, and 5 minutes is probably a joke or a story you did on a movie, but they don't really know you. And I think a podcast is better because we could get more of you, and you don't have to be, hey, look at me. You know what I mean?
Right. And that's because, presentation is the David Letterman show, right? You
Yeah,
sit down, there's nothing really that he's going to ask you that's going to be off the cards, or at least there wasn't for me. It would always be like, so I understand you and Madonna went to dinner. And then I'd have a little Madonna story, and, then I'd do something else. And so there was no conversation. There was really just, let me present my stories and you can react as you do. And then we'll go to break and then we're done.
yeah,
But it's very hard, especially when you're a host and you watch Letterman and you watch all those shows and you see the guests that you're having tomorrow on
today.
Tonight Show
Yeah,
or on Late Show, and then you have them and they start the same story. So it's not even like you can act surprised, because like
yeah,
I tell my producers, tell me the general gist. Okay, he went away with his family, something funny. Okay, don't tell me the rest, because I needed to have some element of truth there. I couldn't just be like, oh, pretending. And I'm very happy that I'm now in podcasting, because I would rather at 61 have conversations than have prepared little bits that people perform for me.
yeah, definitely. How many times did it take for you to ask Tom Cruise until he said yes? Like, was it a one-hit wonder or like?
Oh no, it was from episode one where I told of my love for him, and and he was there shortly thereafter. I mean, he came in before Barbara Streisand did, and it was a big deal. I mean, listen, I went to see him at the movie theater for the one where he sang in his underwear,
Um,
All the
uh,
Right Moves or something. What was that called?
yeah,
I
I'm
can't even
having a
remember now.
blank.
I'm
Risky
so
Business.
risky business.
Yes,
And
excellent.
I went with my sister, and we were like, teenagers, right, or 20 maybe, and I was like, that guy is dreamy. And Nora Ephron used to say to me, "You only like men who are physically beautiful. You like them so pretty that they're almost women." Like, well, I don't know if I would say that, but he is a stunning creature to look at, you
Yeah.
know?
Well,
Yeah.
if you watch the interviews, because I did some watching, I watched them when I was a kid, but I rewatched them for this interview. Your smile is just so beautiful. Like I was like, oh my God, like I know how you were feeling in that moment because I feel if John Cusack ever says he'll do my podcast, I would feel like that. You know what I mean? So like
Yes.
I was like, oh,
So Norm and John, I can see a sort of connection or similarity there. Who else did you look up to and think I really admire what they do and I'd like to be like them?
well, my favorite actor is John Cusack. My favorite non-big actor is Jake Weber, who I eventually did interview. And I like Rick Moranis' comedy, and I kind of like the guys who are kind of like the underdogs. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I find there's something very human about that. Like I was good friends with Bob Saget, and
Oh, wow. So
so
you lost two close friends then in a recent period.
yeah, Saget really, because when Norm died, Saget called me every single week to see how I was doing. Like I was like Norm's son, like adopted comedy son. Like it's a simple Google search. Like we did everything together. So like when I lost Norm, I was very grateful for Saget because he stepped up, and then Saget just died so weirdly. You know what I mean? So
What do you think that was? It was like the family never really said, and I don't know what the cause of death was. He had blunt trauma, but
uh,
was that from a fall? Did someone hit him? What happened?
I have no idea. But I mean, there's a joke in the comedy community that don't let Keith Reza open up for you.
It's not funny, but
I
all
know,
right.
but that's the joke going on. So, but I wanted to ask you, you actually did interview John Cusack. So
Oh yeah.
I wanted to know like how is that? Like because I know you've probably interviewed so many tough people and stuff. What was that like?
I knew his sister Anne
Yeah,
and
I
I
love
knew
it.
Joan, so I was a little comfortable around him. I wasn't really that nervous. It's funny, the people who are around my age, I don't have the same feeling of awe as the ones who were there when I was growing up.
Right.
So, like Shirley Hemphill, or meeting Florence Henderson when I did, or, some Broadway legend that, Patty LaPone, or, who I saw when I was in high school and she did Evita. And I was totally enamored and blown away by her talent. And so those people who I held in high regard when I was a kid, I have more anxiousness and memory of the interviews than I do when it was someone who was around my age and I knew their family. So, I find John lovely. I've always admired him. I think he's a great actor. I like what he chooses to do politically. I like who he is and what he stands for. And I think he's a really wonderful man.
Yeah. Awesome. Who's the toughest person you've ever interviewed? Like the someone you were just like, oh God, I don't want like I'm gonna do it because it's a challenge, but like after you do, you're like that was really tough.
Well, De Niro doesn't notoriously doesn't speak on interviews, but when he was doing those movies in the '90s and with Merrill and the bicycle, and then she would come on with him, or one of his co-stars from another film would come on with him. But if you could get him to say a sentence, that was a victory. But I think the hardest one I ever did was Keanu, who was very nervous when he was on, and he wasn't really talking. And then I said, because it was live TV, I'm sorry, but it's a talk show. Like, come on, help me, please. Just help me a little bit.
Yeah.
But he is a lovely, lovely person. And I think it was the artifice that threw him. He didn't want to have some fake bullshit thing, and, daytime TV, and he didn't know me. And, so he was one of the harder ones. Johnny Depp, when he was on, was so nervous. I had to go talk to him before he came on the set, which I rarely did. I just wanted to, I would usually say hello to people, but it was never like, so-and-so is so nervous, you got to talk to them so they'll come on.
Oh
So
my
I
God.
went into his trailer and was like, nobody gets hurt here. I'm your friend. I'm not going to do anything that's going to throw you off. I'm
Uh,
here to make you look good, So
the,
we got through it. We got through it.
the Keanu one doesn't really surprise me because my friend Jay Moore did a movie with him, and he said during, like, usually in movies, I mean, I've only done a couple, but like you would rehearse the scene, then film it. And Jay told me Keanu like had a hard time rehearsing. Like he was more of
Right.
a let's film it type of guy.
Yeah. Yeah. I love Jay Moore. What a nice guy he is.
Yeah, yeah, I love Jay.
We started together on Long Island years ago.
Oh, really?
I used to work with him a little bit. Yeah.
Well, I'll tell him you said hi.
Please do.
And then I wanted to jump into your movie career. I apologize. These got mixed because I accidentally dropped them. But I wanted to ask you about a movie that's really hard to find. That I don't know if a lot of people have seen it, but it was such a touching story. It was called America, and I wanted to know because you wrote the script, and you were the star in it and stuff, and it was obviously a story that touched you. How is that transition to writing something like that to filming something like
I was on my way to LA to work, and the show was still on in production. And one of the PAs said, I just read this book. I think you'd like it. And so on the way there, I read the whole book, and I was so blown away by it that while I was in LA for the 2 weeks, I adapted the book into a script. And then I gave it to my agent, and she said, we can definitely make this. And so we ended up making the film, and we couldn't find the lead character. And we were gonna give up. We were at this restaurant called Small Plates, and I'm sitting with the other producer, Larry Zielinski, and I said, what are we gonna do? I go, the truth of the matter is, you see that kid sitting right there? If we should hire that kid. I don't even know if he can act, but you know what he looks like, there's his family. That's the story that we're telling. I said, I'm gonna go over to him. He's like, are you kidding? I said, I'm just gonna go. I go, because we were reading people the next day, the last day of reading people to find this role.
that?
And I went up to him and I asked him his name, and he told me it was Philip. And I said, we have this movie. Have you ever thought about being in a movie? You have a beautiful look. You really have a calm countenance. It's what the character is. It's about foster care. And, I play the social worker who kind of helps you through your emotional stuff. And well, he came in and the kid blew us away.
Oh
He
my God.
absolutely blew us away. And then they sent it to the network, and the network was like, he's never done anything. You expect to cast this guy who's never done one thing in this movie where we're paying for, but they let us do it. And it was fantastic. He was
Oh,
amazing. It's one
I,
of the things I'm most proud of. I'm glad you brought that one up, because not a lot of people are familiar with that one.
yeah, because when you said yes, like because I try really hard. I know sometimes it's impossible. Some questions get re-asked and stuff, but I try really hard not to ask the same questions and try and make it unique. And then I saw that movie and I just thought it was so good. And I was like,
Well, thank you. Thank
yeah,
you so much. I was really proud of the director, who's French Canadian and so talented. And I loved that he saw the movie when he read the script in his head. And it's a beautiful piece about a horrible part of the United States, the foster care system, and it really needs to be blown up and redone start to finish. And there are 500,000 kids in foster care and only 300,000 licensed foster homes. So there are kids every day lost in the system, mulling about, who age out and never have a family to love them. And it's a tragedy. And
Yeah.
I hope that film would do something. And we did go to Washington and talk to people about the crisis of foster care. And it's a very big deal, and it definitely needs attention still.
Do you think that it's gotten worse with the pandemic?
Oh,
Because like,
yes.
yeah.
Oh,
So
yes. So much so. After the hurricane in New York 10 years ago, I guess that was, maybe even more, maybe 15 years ago. I don't know. I'd have to look that up. But there was such devastation that many families who had lost their homes, who found themselves pregnant, were thinking to adopt the baby out because the crisis, the hurricane had destroyed their ability to, recover. And they didn't necessarily want to place their baby, but they felt that they had to.
yeah,
So when crisis happens, there are a lot more families that look to adoption, you know, as a final and last resort. And God knows I wouldn't want my kid in foster care in America. I mean, adoption is different, but still there need to be better laws and national standards and ways that the birth mothers don't get abused or taken advantage of. And it's a very complicated issue. I'm the mother of 5 adopted children, and I had 2 foster kids. So I understand the issues and have been involved in them. And it's very complicated, I mean, my children are very okay with their adoption. They, I don't know, there doesn't seem to have been the stigma that so many people suffer from. I'm not sure why that is, but we talk about it, we discuss it, and it's a very tumultuous topic now, especially online or on TikTok. There's a
yeah.
bunch of adoptee voices that, feel as though they've been left out of the conversation and that their point of view should be the main focus and possibly the only point of view, which I don't really agree with. I think when you adopt a baby, you, the birth family, and that child are in like a connected unit forever, because the
Yeah.
child's going to grow up and maybe want to search you out. And we're going to meet each other, and I'm going to look you in the face and thank you, for placing your child and giving my life meaning. But I
Yeah.
also realize what a primal wound that is for the infant separated from their mother, and the smells, the sounds of her voice, the heartbeat, everything's different. And there is trauma definitely associated with adoption.
Well, I'm glad you made that movie because it sounds like that was one that really touched your heart of all the, stuff you did. So that was awesome.
Yeah, I love when I read a script or a book and I can see the film in my head, you
Yeah.
know, and then to just sit down and type it out. I was very possessed with getting the story told.
And then we have to spend a couple seconds on another stakeout, which I feel is probably one of those sequels that's probably better than the original. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I agree. I agree. Listen, Emilio and Richard were so funny. And Emilio and I could not work together after lunch because we had very early calls. We were staying and shooting. We were shooting on an island and we had to take a helicopter there. But Emilio was afraid of the helicopter. So he took a 2.5 hour boat trip every day to the island. And Richard and I would be waving at the boat as we were flying in, but he was the funniest. Emilio was the funniest guy. I loved working with him, and we would laugh so much. There are some scenes where he and I are in a scene together, and you just see our shoulders. Like, you can tell, like, if you watch some of those scenes up close, you see him trying to bite his lip. And, but we got to the point where we would get in trouble like little kids, where they'd be like, stop it now. We have to
yeah.
shoot this. I'm like, no, 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 I'll get it. I'll get it. But I love that movie. I love Richard Dreyfuss. I think he's one of our best actors out there, and he's written a beautiful book about teaching children civics in high school, how we haven't taught that since he was a boy, and that's really a problem in our society today. And I definitely think he's right.
Yeah. I also love the scene of with you and Richard, and then the other family. I apologize, I don't know the actors' names, but where you guys were just saying, "Oh, I'm psychic" and all that stuff, and then like I just I know all the answers. I can't watch Jeopardy.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, and it's great when you work with a cast and a director that doesn't mind when you improvise. There was a lot of improvisation. Who's better at improvisation than Richard Dreyfuss? I don't like the panties drying on the line. I mean, he
I was
he
gonna say,
is.
who's better than Rosie O'Donnell? I mean, you were great in that.
Well, thank you so much. But I really had a great time, and it was the first time I had to carry a gun in a movie, and it was right after Brandon Lee's son got killed.
Oh, on The
Brandon Lee got
Crow,
killed.
yeah.
Yes, on The Crow. That's when we were shooting it, and everybody was so nervous. I had squibs. I got shot at the end, and everybody, the actor who had to shoot me, was like, "I don't want to do it. I'm afraid." And they're like, "No, we checked it." But it was right after it happened. It was so tragic and so scary.
Do you think like because I mean now that you brought that up, like it seems like when people film movies now that do involve guns, I'm not saying guns are a good thing or a bad thing, but movies, the stories they do have it. And I feel like with the whole Alec Baldwin thing, I think like now it's more like scarier. You know what I mean?
Well, it was always scary because people had died before the Rust accident, but the Brandon Lee thing, that was a pretty big to do as well. And Miguel Ferrar was his best friend, and he was on the set with us in the movie, and he was so upset. And one night he was at the bar, and he was, throwing some back and crying, and he says, "Rosie." And I go, "Yeah." He goes, "Come here." And I said, "Hello, this is Rosie." And the voice says, "Hello, this is Rosie." And it was his mom, Rosemary Clooney.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So I talked to her, we became friends, and then she ended up on my show for a bunch of times.
Oh,
But
that's
it's a lovely memory of that with a horrible reason to remember it. But yeah, I think that accidents happen when budgets get cut and when they try to cut corners here and there, and how a live bullet got in that gun, I have no idea.
yeah.
And I know that when I was just in a series, American Gigolo, I played a detective. I had a gun on set, and I was always very conscious of it. I mean, you said they're not good things or bad things, guns. I think they're bad things.
No,
I,
I didn't.
I
I said like in the script. The fact is they'll be in a strip in a
Oh
script.
yeah,
Yeah,
totally.
yeah.
But just in my life, I think, we are a gun crazed country. There are so many guns, there are so many deaths. It's the number one cause of death of children now is gunshots in America. I mean, it's embarrassing and it needs to stop. And I wish that, well, the Second Amendment, there were many things about the Constitution that we had to change and amend as time went on. And the access to guns is one of them, I believe.
So I have four more questions. These are pretty quick though. Uh,
Okay.
so the Flintstone set, how cool is that?
Unbelievable. We drove out to the desert, and there it was, my cartoon come to life.
Yeah.
And the cars, everything they made, the department, the prop department was so clever. And I was hanging up Fred's clothes, and the little clothespins that we used were baby alligators. That when you opened it, their mouth opened, and then they made their eyes go, so it looked like they were alive, but they were props.
Yeah.
But I have two of those. I took them from the set one day. But yeah, I love doing that movie. I thought it was so much fun. John Goodman, Rick Moranis, and Elizabeth Perkins. And, we all had fun. Rick Moranis is a great guy. John Goodman was at that time still drinking quite a lot. And some days, you'd see him in scenes a little wobbly. But he pulled it through. He did it, and he's doing well now. He's thin and sober, and I'm happy for him. He's a wonderful guy.
I looked like the kid who played Bam Bam when I was a kid. So like,
Oh, right.
yeah. So like, I don't know. I thought maybe I could be Bam Bam in the sequel, but I didn't. No, whatever.
You didn't get it. That's
I
all
didn't
right.
get.
You'll get another one. You'll
Yeah.
do the story of Bam Bam grown up and with the challenges he had.
Oh, that'd be
Write
cool.
write that movie. You can make it a big hit for yourself.
Definitely. And then the other thing I wanted to ask you is when you started to do your podcast Onward, which I really like, and I think it's very unique and very, great. But do you think that maybe you did that because a lot of people asked you to redo the Rosie O'Donnell show? Like, was that maybe something that played into that?
Yes, and I really think, you can't catch lightning in a bottle twice. And it's a young person's game, and I see the people doing it now, and I just feel like at 61, I don't need to go work that hard. I was very lucky to have made crazy money when I made it. And, although I have 5 children, we've been lived a privileged and lucky life. And I am not in the position where I need to do something like that for work. And if I were, I would try to do that. But I'm not, and I'm in a position where I can do something and stay home. As you know, my daughter is 10 and she has autism, and this is a difficult time, 10 through 16. The doctor says, and all of the psychiatrists say, this is the time that you need to be present most and provide as clear boundaries and steering kind of where the boat's going for the family. So I don't think I would have time now at 61 with my life as it is to do another talk show. And I think that doing a podcast fits in with my world, and I really am thrilled that I get to do it. I'm so happy that you like it. At first, I thought it was going to be too boring, like Rosie talking with her friends, but people seem to enjoy it.
No, no, I love it because, I think you've always been one of those people that give, hope to so many different diversities of people too, not just the gay community, but also the autistic community and, all this stuff. And I think maybe part of you realizes it, but I also think part of you doesn't realize how special you are to everybody. You know what I
Oh,
mean? So,
well, yeah. I mean, I think when things come into my life and world, I don't think it's an accident. So it's very hard to spend a night away from my kid when we're having dinner and socializing, which is something that she needs help with both those things. She has very limited food intake, right? She only likes a few things. And, you can't even give her a cookie if it's not the kind of cookie that she wants.
I'm the same way. Yeah.
Yeah. So what are your safe foods?
I like macaroni and cheese and the oatmeal cream cookies. The little
Yeah.
Debbie ones. I love
Yes.
those. Like
Yeah.
that's basically all I eat.
How about when you go to a restaurant? What do you do?
I ask them for macaroni and cheese.
You go to the kids' meal, go to the kids'
Yeah,
meal.
and
Yeah.
then
You
they say
know,
it's for 12 or under. I was like, oh, I'm 12.
I always I always say I'll pay double, but I need to have that for her. No, but it's funny because there's so many things associated with autism that people don't realize. And for you to not have been diagnosed till you were 25, probably very interesting because people
13,
would
yeah.
oh, 13. I
13,
don't know
yeah.
why I heard 25. 13, that's much better. But I'm sure your parents were like, why won't he eat anything? Why
Yeah.
won't he eat anything? When people say that about my kid, and they say, friends of mine come over who have children and they go, let me try. I'm like, good luck, call me when it's done. I'll be in the other room. But there are so many aspects of autism that I find fascinating that if I could sort of spend the last third of my life really advocating and exposing the world of autistics, I would be very happy with that,
Yeah.
because it's so prevalent now and no one knows why it's more prevalent. Some people think, oh, we're just diagnosing it better, but I don't believe that. I think there's some shift going on, in consciousness and in what's happening, I don't know. I'm very intrigued by the whole subject.
I think it would be cool if, Dakota would ever want to do it. I mean, obviously it's her choice. If you interview her on Onward,
Yeah.
I think that would
It's
be
funny
awesome.
because, yeah, she might do it, but just like she wants to do TikToks with me, and how it happens is she'll go, let's do one now. Like, I can't ever
Yeah,
suggest it. I can't say,
spur of
hey,
the
well, I
moment.
did say to her, I said, why don't we talk about the Barbie movie? She's like, no. That's the end of that.
So my two final questions. One, if you could go back in a time machine and talk to a younger Rosie O'Donnell,
Mm.
what advice or what would you tell your younger self now that you know today?
That it goes so fucking quick.
Yeah.
I can't believe that I'm 61 years old. I can't believe it. Now, when I look at my career and all the things I've done and all the people I've got to meet and all the accolades and awards, I'm kind of amazed. And then it looks like, okay, I see where you're 61, but inside, I don't feel like 61. And every year I rent a house on the Jersey Shore, and my children come and they each bring a friend. And I bring my two best friends from my street where I grew up, Jackie and Jeannie, who are still my best friends. And we go and we all just hang out for, a couple weeks there on the shore. And there's nothing better to that than that to me, because some people don't have friends of 58 years, but I do. When I was 3 years old, I knocked on her door, Jackie's door across the street, and said, do you have anyone here? Three. And we've been best friends since then. And to have that kind of a relationship, so many women crave it and so many women have it. And those ones usually write in and go, I have a Jeannie and a Jackie,
Yeah.
and so I would tell myself, slow down and slow down and really savor every moment, because when it comes to your 60s and you go, if I'm lucky, I got 25 years left, that's 25 summers. If I'm lucky,
Yeah.
very lucky.
I'm really glad you said that and you didn't say, don't do Keith Reza's podcast.
No, but definitely don't let him open for you.
Well, Rosie, I love you very much. Thank you for doing this. Where can the folks at home follow and support you?
Rosie at everything on Instagram, on TikTok, it's at Rosie. And, let me know what you're thinking. Also, Onward, we have our podcast, and that's it. I do TikTok lives every so often, so drop in. But listen, if you're ever doing stand up here in the LA area, let me know. I want to come watch.
Oh, that would be great. That would be awesome.
Do
Thank
you
you,
go on
Rosie.
a lot here? Do you go on in LA?
Not in a while, but I mean, I'm trying. I mean, I open for TJ Miller right now, but he's always in New York. So when he goes to LA, he lets me do it. But yeah, I mean, I'll send you my
Okay.
special and stuff. So
I'd love to see it. Thank you so much.
okay. Well, Rosie, thank you so much for doing it, and thanks for being my best friend for 45 minutes. I really appreciate that.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
All right, have a great day, Rosie.
Take care.
Bye. All right, guys, that was an interview with Rosie O'Donnell. Subscribe, rate, review, tell a friend, and we'll see you guys next week.
You're listening to Reza Riffs with Keith Reza and Alan Lee, right here on LA Talk Radio.